Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another Unity 3D tutorial on how to make a multiplayer first-person shooter. So, we've got all the core mechanics are technically in place at this point. We can connect multiple people to one server, we can have them run around, and we can have them shoot each other, but it's not very sexy right now. So we're going to put a few quality of life things in here at this point to start to fill in the gaps of what you would expect from the shooter. The mechanics are there, but the look and feel of it is certainly not. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm actually going to change the way that we connect to our server here, because right now we just hit play and it connects us to the server, and that's all there is to it. Now, I'm not going to do a full sort of lobby lookup, anything like that, but we'll at least get some buttons in there so that you can choose whether you want to be single player or multiplayer, so you can test things offline. Especially it'll be handy later if we ever get around to putting in bots. And the other thing we want, mostly the thing we want, is we want people to be able to put in a username when they connect so that people will know who killed them. So, or rather, who they're killing. So we're going to do some quick GUI stuff. Now, in our scripts, we do have our network manager, and we also have this one placeholder for GUI stuff. I think what's going to happen is I think in this network manager, we're going to actually do the on GUI-ness. We already have a little on GUI call, which is going to be fine. So I'm going to leave that label in there, which is just going to keep our current connection status. And then what I'm going to do is, if we are not currently connected, which we can check. So if photon network dot connected equals false. Okay, if we're not connected, and there's some other stuff we're going to want to do, but we'll start with this. If we are not connected, let's make some buttons. So we're going to use GUI layout as the lazy way, and we're not doing a very nice GUI. Part of the reason is because at some point Unity is going to come out with a different GUI system that should be a lot better. It's being actively worked on. They keep promising us that the next version will have it, the next version will have it. Hasn't come out yet, but it's any version now. There's going to be a completely new GUI system in Unity, because thank God the built-in one sucks. Almost everyone uses NGUI. Think just spelled like that. It's an add-on. It's available in the Unity asset store. Most people just use that. And in fact, I believe it's the NGUI guys that got hired by Unity to revamp their GUI system. Because Unity was going to come out with one, and I think they weren't super happy with it, so they ended up just hiring this guy to make their system work better. So, all right, GUI layout. What we're going to do is we're going to make some buttons, right? So, let's start off by making some buttons. We're going to do single player and multiplayer. Okay, so if we start, they'll just show up there. Now you'll notice this keeps blinking and blanking, and it's still auto-connecting. Let's get rid of the auto-connect, which is this. We're going to clear that out. And what I'm going to do is actually, if we click the multiplayer button, then call connect. If we click the single player button, then, well, we can actually move this code here. We're just going to do this. We're going to set offline mode to true and do join lobby. And then the connect script will actually do a proper connect now. There. That, if we hit play, so nothing will happen. We will not connect it. Peer was created, whatever that means. We can go into single player, multiplayer mode. If we go single player, it's instant connection to offline mode. And if we hit multiplayer, it does the connection to the server as before. Now, it does do that weird, there's a certain part and process where apparently Photon Network reports connected as being false midway through, which is kind of weird. And the problem is we're not fully connected at that point. We're not actually connected, but the buttons are still on the screen for a little period of time, which is not what we want. We also want to know if we're connecting. Now, I can't recall, but I don't believe that Photon Network has a connecting kind of thing. And we could check connection state and do various things, and that doesn't sound like fun. Let's just create a boolean here. And current bool connecting is equal to false. So if connected is false and connecting is false, then show this menu. So, and then we're going to set connecting to be true if we push either button, probably. Like that. Now the buttons don't show up again. I would like the screen to be centered though. By default, GUI layout goes into vertical layout mode, which is fine. Now we can center things vertically very, very cheaply by simply doing something like, I guess we can put all this code in here. We can do GUI layout dot flexible space and another flexible space. So this will pad the top and bottom. That's not where we want it. We want it here. We'll pad the top and bottom of our little menu with equal amounts of space. Whoa. No, really? Do I have to go begin vertical? Let me find out. And end vertical. Not going to go into great detail about these things because, again, this GUI system sucks. Oh, maybe I have to do a begin area. I don't know. Begin area, it needs a rectangle, so we're going to send it a new rectangle, and we're simply going to feed it the size of the screen. Just screen.width and screen.height. I mean, this is what I normally do, but I didn't think I actually had to do all this. And then end area. Watch, there's something else that I'm missing. There we go. Now, okay, our GUI layout area is sized to the fullness of our screen. It's padded top and bottom by the flexible space, and it centers everything vertically. And then we'll do the same thing horizontally as well. So actually, before we start this vertical area, we're going to start a horizontal. So we're going to go begin horizontal, and then down here, GUI layout dot end horizontal. And this flexible space, we're going to put there and there. And then our button should be centered. It's a lot of code for something that's butt ugly. But there we have it. Now, we don't want to actually start multiplayer until we know what the player's name is. So we're going to throw some extra stuff in here. In that, in this vertical area up here, we're going to prompt the player to put in a name. So I'm actually going to start another horizontal area here so we can have sort of a label and a text area. So we're going to go GUI layout dot label username like that, and then GUI layout dot text field, and it needs to know the text that we're putting in here, and then some options. We can leave the options blank. So if I run this, this should give me a text field. But quite notably, oh, up there. Oops. But quite notably, we won't be able to edit the text field. Right? We can select, we can scroll around, but we can't actually type into it. It never changes. And the reason is that we're always feeding it in a constant string. So in Photon Network, we have a current player representing us. And so let me see, Photon Network.player, right? This is us. And the player, each player object, the class I think is called Photon Player. Yeah, there's a Photon Player class. Okay, and that's what Photon Network.player is. And that class has a few parameters, but most importantly, it has one called name. Or not most importantly, but for this particular example, it's pretty important. So what we actually want to do is we want to put that in text field. Oops, not in quotes. And we want to set it to the return. What people are typing in there, we want to stuff into that variable. And this will ensure that we can actually update things. And I think it'll start blank. It does. And oh yeah, it does the weird growing thing, which is very, very awkward. But it technically works. Let me set the Photon Player Network.name equals... what was the classic name that used to show up in those games? Is it just like noob? Awesome dude. There we go. That is the default name that's going to be in there. And then you can set the text field width to be constant so it doesn't like grow randomly or anything like that. Quoi? Oh, not connect and start. But that's, again, we're not doing a GUI tutorial here. There we go. So I would be Quill18. It'd also be nice if this sort of persisted between games so that I didn't have to type in my name every time. So what we're going to do here, instead of just grabbing from a constant string, we're actually going to go, there's the player prefs, which is built into Unity, which allows you to store information. So we're going to get string. We're going to have a string called username. And we can pass a default value, which is what awesome dude is going to be. So if there's no player preference called username, it's going to use awesome dude. And then whenever the player changes its name, or actually what we're going to do is, whoops, when we quit the program, which is what when onDestroy gets called, we're going to store in player prefs dot set string. Last thing we do before we quit the program is just remember, whoops, what our username is, so we don't have to type it in every time. So assuming I've done all that right, which, you know, odds are not great, but let's find out. Come on. Quill 18, and then I'm going to stop the program, start it up again. Hey, it remembers who I am. Fantastic. Okay, and that actually sets it in the Photon Network player, and this information, the username here, will automatically get transmitted over the network. The other thing that you may want to play with for various things, there's these properties. There's some properties that are built in, and there's also custom properties you can set. Now, all properties has everything, and then custom properties are just properties that you've personally set. It uses a hash table to set them, and I believe that you can't just go custom properties dot some property. Now you can read from there, but I don't think you can just set this directly. I think what you have to do is grab all of them in the hash table like this, and then make changes to properties, and then store that back in. Actually, say I shouldn't be talking about things that I haven't like specifically looked up to reminded myself of. Yeah, you want to use set custom properties. That's what it is. You get a copy of the hash. You make any changes that you want to. And then use set custom properties to feed that hash table back in. And as I'm saying this, I don't think it's actually critical for you to grab the existing one and make changes. I think if you just have this hash table with a single entry, all it does is update this one entry. Anything that you already had in there is still there. It's just if you had one that was called as does in there, then it overwrites just that one line. Double check the documentation on that. I may be lying to you. Anyway, we're not really covering that in this tutorial. That's sort of just an aside. But we've got the player name that's in there, which is great. Now, what it would be very cool is if we, when we join the server, it let people know that there was, so-and-so has joined the game. So let's do that. So we've got our on GUI if we are not connected. But what if we are connected? Wouldn't it be cool to let people know? So, okay, so this is just what's showing up if we are not connected. This is the main menu. Now, if we are connected, so if connected equals true, then we'd like to show something different. Now, keep in mind, it was sort of blinking a little bit oddly. Connected flips to true at some random point during the connection process. So we want to say if we're connected and we are no longer trying to connect. If connecting is false, and where do we set connecting to be false? Well, how about when we start spawning our player, we'll set connecting to be equal to false. So there, this bit of code will only run once we are good and truly in the game. Well, actually, I don't even know about spawn player. You know what? We're going to do onJoined room. That will make way more sense. Set connecting to false and then spawn the player. The end result will be the same, but it just feels like it logically makes more sense. Anyway, let's put in a little text box down here at the bottom that just, can post events into that. So what we can do is something like, what do we do? Well, let's say, I'm not sure this is the best way of doing it. It's going to be a ridiculously large string, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to have a string called chat messages. Actually, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be a list of string. Whoa. system.collections.generic. I like this one better. It's going to be a list of strings called chat messages. And in our start, we're going to initialize that. New list string. And we're going to create some sort of function. Public void add chat message. There's going to be some string. And chat messages dot add m. We're going to do something like that. And actually, we're going to want to set limits and kill the old ones or whatever. But you know what? For our purposes, this is going to be peachy, awesome, fine. So we've got some list of chat messages. So in here, if we're connected, what we're going to do, we're going to borrow a page from this first bit. We're going to begin an area that's the size of the whole screen. Then we're going to start a vertical area with a flexible space. And then we're going to end the vertical area and end the entire area. And we're going to do something right here. So this vertical space, this will pad everything. This will fill the top and shove everything down to the bottom, and that's where we're going to have our text area. So we're just going to go GUI layout dot text. And technically, I mean, text area is weirdly editable and different things. I'm just using text area here because it's very convenient. So it wants to be passed a string. Actually, no, we don't. Text area would be dumb. So we only want to show a few messages. So what we actually want to do is use a bunch of GUI layout.label, which is just some text that gets printed to the screen that you can't actually interact with. That's probably what we want to do. So for right now, you know what? So we're going to set a limit. Int max chat messages equals 5. We only care about the last 5 messages. So if chat messages dot length count is greater than or equal to max chat messages, or actually we'll just go while it's greater than or equal to max chat messages, we're going to remove the first one. So chat messages dot remove at, we're going to remove the oldest one in the list. Now this, in theory, should only remove one thing ever, but you know, maybe there's some other way we're throwing in chat messages or whatever, so it'll do that. So it'll add strings to our chat messages, and then it'll remove the oldest ones at any given point. And then what we're going to do over here, we're just going to do a loop for int, actually we can do it for each. For each string message in chat messages, GUI layout.label with the message. So, and then we can actually populate this with add chat message, spawning player, so photon network.player.name. Now, right now, this is only going to happen on our system, but we're going to get that cleaned up real soon. Spawning the... Yeah, all right, let's see what happens. So we should hit play. Thing will look fine. I'm going to go into single player mode, and there it is. Spawning player Quill18 at the bottom. Now, you probably want to do something like just put a timer on there so that 5 seconds after the last message is received. If you haven't received a message in 5 seconds, just hide this box. Ideally, you have it fade out in a really sexy way and different things. And again, we're not doing fancy GUI stuff because the built-in Unity things makes it a pain in the butt. So we're not gonna bother doing that. But we've got the messages in there. Now, this message only happens on the current player, right? It'll tell you that you have just spawned, but it's not going to tell anyone else that you've just spawned. Well, that's no good. So we want to tell everyone in the network. To me, that sounds like another RPC call. So in our scripts, this is our global scripts object. Let's go ahead and throw a photon view on here, just so that we can do RPC calls on this object. That sounds reasonable to me. All right. So this add chat message, we actually want this to be an RPC. Now, it's a little inconvenient to use. What do I want to show? To use, see in player shooting here. So we've got our RPC is now this. You know, that's a bit a bit of extra text. It would be awfully convenient if we just went add chat message and just have it work. Well, let's do that. The way we're going to do that and still have it be an RPC is this function here is not actually going to do anything. Instead, we're going to have an RPC variant. This is going to be our RPC. Doesn't even need to be public, honestly. And then we're going to keep the old version of the function call around, which was actually, this was the public without the RPC. And this is going to do the get, well, okay, I'll do it this way for now. Get component photon view dot RPC, and then we're going to call the RPC variant of it. And we're going to send it to photon targets dot all. And I don't think I talked about what the all buffered was last time. We're still going to have to catch up to that because, yeah, we'll talk about it. I promise we'll talk about all buffered, which is going to be very important for the health of the crates. And the parameter is simply going to be M. There we go. So now, if I just call add chat message, it's actually going to turn right around and do an RPC call to make sure that everyone gets a copy of this chat message. And so from my point of view here, in single player, it should work exactly the same. Yep, spawning player quill 18. And then in multiplayer, it should also look exactly the same. Boom, just takes a little longer because we're connecting. And then if I were to build and run and hit play, and actually this is going to be a great example to show off what the buffered thing does or doesn't do. I'm going to connect it. This is going to be like the Windows client. Go into multiplayer mode. There it is. Spawning player Windows client. Hope you can see it in the bottom corner. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect here as well. Hopefully it's not going to do the thing where it hangs. Let me go into single player mode first, just in case it makes a difference. I think I've got to reboot my computer. Okay, there we go. Spawning player quill 18. Then if I tab over here, in this version of the client, we see the message spawning player Windows client and spawning player quill 18. But in this version of the window, we don't see the message spawning player Windows client. Why is that? Well, the reason is the RPC call that sent the message spawning player Windows client happened before this client joined the server, and this client never got that message. Now for chat stuff, that's fine. The problem is, it is when you blow up a crate. So let me go and show that off exactly, so we can see exactly what the issue is here. I'm gonna hit play. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, multiplayer. So my Windows version. I'm gonna blow up this crate. Boom. Now I'm gonna connect over here in the Unity version, multiplayer, and I still see the crate here. Whereas here it's gone. And it's the same issue as with the messages. The message that the crate has taken damage came and went before the second client ever joined, so it doesn't know. Now for instantiated stuff, that doesn't matter. It's automatically going to work okay for stuff that was instantiated over the network, because when you join, the server will only send you information about instantiated objects that still exist. And also anything that is covered by the simple observation script. What it will do when you join, it will send you the latest update from Photon View, whatever is being observed. All right. And one thing you'll notice when we join in the server, it tends to like teleport this guy, because what happens when we instantiate the object, it's instantiating it sort of in the middle, and then it's only updating the position using a lerp on the second client. So it's doing that thing where this person, whoever joins second, the person will show up here and then vroom like that to the correct location. Like, I'm sure you've noticed that once we get into the game. The way to correct that, and actually I suppose we should do that, in our network character, right? So player 1 has already joined. Player 2 joins, gets a copy of player 1 as real position, and then slowly lerps the real position. So it thinks player 1, when it first connects, it thinks player 1 is at 0, 0, 0. And then it gets the real position, and then it lerps from 0, 0, 0 to the real position, which is no good. What we probably want is something like a Boolean called got first update equals false. And then we could do something like if got first update equals false, then instead of putting it in real position, you can update it right away. And that certainly is a possibility. In fact, I think we do want to do that. But before I do that, let's consider the situation where we've actually behind. We got a little bit of lag, and we're not getting the updates. Well, hold on. Let me collect my thoughts for a second here. It's a good idea if we still haven't caught up to the last real position. So let's say we're here, okay? Right now, real position holds the other person's position at the last frame. Instead of simply updating real position and continuing to lerp, we may want to set our transform.position immediately to this old real position, and then update real position. It's if you're a little bit laggy or a little bit delayed, that will let you sort of catch up instantly. If we do sort of right at this step, this is the old real position, and you could do the same with the old rotation. All right, same thing as this. Now, this will lead to a slight sort of teleport jump. If you're falling behind, this can lead to a little bit of a teleport, which may or may not be desirable depending on what kind of fidelity you're looking for. In this case, I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to leave this note in, but I'm not going to do this line here. However, if I'm actually going to get rid of this here and move this down here. If we this is our first update. So if got first update is equal to false, if we've never gotten the position before, then you know what? We don't want to do the teleport from position 000 or the slow slide from position 000 to the real position. So what we want to do is on this very first go, we don't want to do this gradual lerp. We want to instantly teleport the person to the right position and then get got first update to true. That will erase that sort of weird sliding when you're connecting the server. On the very first update, everyone will teleport to the exact correct position they're supposed to be, which will be better. So that's one thing. So that's why instantiated stuff, if it was destroyed, the late joining clients will correctly, not spawn those things, right? Because this is something, and likewise, anything that was instantiated, and you can see this with the player, right? So let's say 15 players join the server. A minute goes by, and then a 16th player joins the server. Well, all of the 15 previous players, because they were instantiated using photon network.instantiated, they will correctly appear in the game for that 16th player. And if 15 players joined and then 5 players quit, when that quote-unquote 16th player joins, he will correctly see 10 players. No more, no less. Well, 10 plus himself. So that's fine as long as it's something that was called with photon network.instantiate and was destroyed with photon network.destroy. But the RPCs, you have to sort of decide whether they're going to be buffered or not. And for something like a crate's hit points, it should definitely be buffered. In fact, all health should probably be buffered here. So we'll demonstrate with both the network manager. Here, when we send the string, we're going to change photon targets to all buffered. So this will demonstrate the principle. So I'm going to go build and run. We're going to start the Windows client. Come on. So this would be Windows, multiplayer. So the text spawning player Windows. Okay, that's good. And then down here, if I play, multiplayer. Now, because it was buffered, I get both updates. That Windows joined and Quill 18 joined. Although I realize that the text order is not right, which might be okay for this. It's a little weird that it didn't send it in the order. It could be, frankly, it could be something as simple as the way that I'm looping through these lines might not be the ideal way of doing it. Oh, no, I know why. It's because we're sending the message to that, spawning player. So when we connect, when we're player 2, we're doing spawn my player, we're adding the chat message here, and we're getting this chat message, we're receiving this chat message instantaneously because it's on the local client. And then, some 100 milliseconds later, I'm getting all the buffered chat messages added there. So that's why it seemed slightly out of order. And I'm not sure, trying to think of the best, most reasonable way to fix this. None of it is particularly important, but we could delay this message by a frame or something weird like that. I'm not going to worry about it. Or you could put in timestamps, right? When you do a chat message, it could actually put in the timestamp, and then it could keep things sorted by timestamp. And again, this is good enough for our purposes. But to bring it back to our health, when we shoot something, we probably need to do a buffered RPC about the thing that we're shooting. That way, people who joined late will know that something has taken damage, especially in the case of lethal damage, because those crates will be instantly destroyed. Again, you may not want to have these crates that I have in here. Where's the crate? You might not want to have things that are destructible and dynamic be placed in the level like this. You may want them to be instantiated. You put in some sort of placeholder that then replaces itself with something that gets instantiated later. That is kind of design decisions that you sort of have to make for yourself based on what kind of game you're making and blah, 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 blah. Things like that. So, but I will say that it's entirely possible that you could end up with so much buffered stuff that when a player joins, it takes like a noticeable amount of time for him to receive all those buffered messages. Now, probably not. I don't expect these to represent a substantial amount of actual data. Most of the lag and things like that from playing the game is simply the amount of time it takes one packet of information, no matter how small, to go from point A to point B. The fact that you'd have, 100 lines of chat messages, for example, or 1,000 lines of chat messages that have accumulated since the game has started, still wouldn't take that long to catch up. And in practice, you don't necessarily want to keep this updated this way because the late joiners don't need to know every single thing that ever happened in chat. So you probably want to come up with some sort of more interesting and creative solution to this particular problem. But the basics are there. And in any case, for a small scale game, this photon targets that are all buffered for health is a reasonable way of implementing this. Anything that, anything that no longer exists in the game world, anything that was instantiated with photon network.instantiate and then destroyed with photon network.destroy, any RPCs meant for that thing, even if it was buffered, will no longer be there. So for example, if you do kill a player, right, there could be a lot of RPCs that were all buffered about a player character. But once that player character is dead and his character was destroyed, all those buffered things will go away and they will not be sent to late joiners at all. So that's one thing there. Again, these crates and barrels things are the only sort of oddball weirdness, and it's just by virtue of the fact that we used a very simple implementation there. Anyway, the early videos, I find they're very focused because they're very straightforward jobs, but as we get into these kind of murkier, weirder areas, there's a lot more sort of me going off on a tangent, and I apologize for that. or maybe you find it fascinating. I don't know. Anyway, that is it for this video. And we'll see you guys next time. And if you haven't done it already, make sure you subscribe to the video. Also, if you like and comment, it really helps my get extra attention on YouTube. Very, very, very handy. And also, there's a link in the description that if you go there, you can download the project files, both the completed ones, and I'm going to put some of these intermediate ones. I don't know if you've noticed, but at the top of the screen here, the project name has been changing. This part number will not match the part of this video, because sometimes I'm working on the same version of my Unity file for more than one video, but you can still sort of use this as a guideline if you're trying to catch up somewhere and your file somehow is like not right and it's broken, you just want to skip ahead, then you can just download the next version of things, and that should work out okay for you. And I think that's it. See you guys next time.